My name is Linda Kowalski. I'm 67 years old. So it is a Thursday morning here in Lakeland, Florida. I have my coffee, and I want to tell you something that happened at Publix about 2 weeks ago that I have not been able to stop thinking about. I was doing my weekly grocery run, regular Thursday. I had my list, I had my reusable bags, I had my phone out for the digital coupons, which, if you'd told me 5 years ago I'd be a digital coupon person, I would have said you had the wrong Linda. But here we are. I'm going through the checkout, everything's on the belt, and the cashier, very sweet young woman, she knows me by now, she reads me my total. And I just stood there for a second because the number was higher than I'd planned for. Not by a lot, maybe $11, but I'd planned for 130 and it rang up at 141. And I said out loud, which was a little embarrassing, that can't be right. It was right. Now, here's the thing. I'm on a fixed income. My Social Security comes in at the beginning of the month. My pension from the dental practice, $610, comes in on the 15th. Together, it's about $27.50 a month. That's my whole budget. That's everything. And I've got my grocery money planned out to $80 a week. So $11 over is not nothing. $11 over that's 2 weeks of streaming. That's almost half my gas budget for the month. I stood at that register and did the mental math in real time, and I felt something I really did not expect to feel at 67 years old, standing in a Publix checkout line. I felt like I'd failed a test I didn't know I was taking. And I've been thinking about that feeling ever since. Because it wasn't about the $11, really. $11 is not going to break me. I've got about $27.50 coming in a month between Social Security and the small pension from my years at the dental practice, and I'm managing on it. My mortgage is paid off. That's the only reason any of this works, honestly. I own my house outright. So it's not that $11 is a catastrophe. It's that $11 was $11 I had not planned for. And on a fixed income, which is what retirement is, even when the word sounds more serious than your actual situation feels, the unplanned for things are the ones that get to you, not the big things, the small things that accumulate. And I think a lot of people who are new to retirement or getting close to it or watching me from wherever you are, I think you know exactly what I'm talking about. Even if the dollar amount is different, even if your situation looks nothing like mine. There's a version of this feeling that's pretty universal, I think. The first time you feel the edges of a budget that didn't used to have edges. Here's the part I keep not wanting to say, but I'm going to say it because I think it's useful. When I was working, 46 years, most of it at the dental practice in Akron and then the physical therapy clinic down here, I didn't think about groceries the way I think about them now. I just bought things. If I needed chicken, I bought chicken. If I felt like having the nice olive oil, I got the nice olive oil. If I was tired on a Tuesday after work and the fancy prepared salad from the deli section looked good, I got the fancy prepared salad, and I didn't do any math about it in the car on the way home. I wasn't wasteful. I want to be clear about that. I wasn't buying things I didn't need or throwing money around. I was just not watching. I was spending money the way you spend money when you have a regular paycheck. Not carelessly, but not carefully either. Somewhere in the comfortable middle. You wake up in retirement and you open the fridge and you think, how much did all of this cost? And that feels strange. Not bad strange exactly, just different. Like there's a whole calculation underneath everything now that you didn't used to have to run. The yogurt isn't just yogurt. It's part of the $80 and you need to know where you are in the $80 at all times. And I don't want to be dramatic about it. I'm not sitting here telling you I'm in trouble. I'm fine. But there's a gap between being fine and having it figured out. And in that gap is a lot of standing in grocery store aisles holding 2 packages of something trying to decide. I'm not going to pretend I've crossed all the way to the other side of that gap. What I can do is tell you what the gap actually looks like from where I'm standing. With real numbers, not vague ones. That's all I've got. Shelley thinks it's oversharing. Shelley is probably right, but I think the real numbers are the only part that's actually useful. The summer before I retired, this was 2022, I was still at the physical therapy clinic. I was planning to leave the following spring. I decided to sit down and really map out what retirement was going to cost me. I got a yellow legal pad. I made columns. I looked up all my bills. And I got to groceries and I just wrote down what I thought I spent. I wrote $250 a month. I have no idea where I got that number. I genuinely do not know. I had not looked at a grocery receipt carefully in probably 10 years. I just wrote it down because it seemed reasonable. A retired woman living alone in Florida. 250 seemed like a number that made sense. Then Shelley came over for dinner one night. She does that. She comes on a Tuesday sometimes just to check in. She brought salad from somewhere and I made pasta. And I showed her my retirement budget spreadsheet. She's a nurse. She's practical. She looked it over for a while without saying much. And then she pointed at the grocery line and she said, "Mom, you spend more than this now." I said, "No, I don't." She said, "Mom, the Thanksgiving grocery run alone was like $400. I said, "That's Thanksgiving. That doesn't count." She gave me a look. It was the same look she's been giving me since she was about 12. Patient, but not buying it. So that night I went and actually pulled my bank statements from the previous 3 months, added up every grocery purchase, and I'm including the quick CVS run for toothpaste, the Walgreens for the headache stuff, the little convenience stop I don't think of as groceries but absolutely is, the time I ran into Rite Aid for just a couple things and came out $40 lighter, and I was spending closer to $380, $390 a month, not counting restaurants, not counting the order I did from that meal kit service for about 6 weeks before I canceled it. Just food and household basics. $380 to $390. Against the $250 I had written in my budget. I sat at my kitchen table with that number and I just thought, okay, well, something has to change here. Because $390 on $27.50 a month is a different calculation than $390 on whatever I was making at the clinic. It's a different percentage of everything. It means something different when there's no more paycheck coming to cover the overage. And here's the thing that surprised me about that moment. It wasn't scary exactly. It was clarifying. Like, okay, now I know what the actual problem is. The actual problem is not that I'm bad with money. The actual problem is that I had never actually tracked what I spent on food in my life, and now I needed to. So I want to go through 4 things I've actually figured out in the year and a half since I retired, about groceries specifically. Real things with real numbers. Some of them are a little embarrassing. That's probably the most useful part. The first thing is just the weekly math and how long it took me to actually do it. I knew my monthly grocery budget was going to be $320. That's what I landed on after doing the honest version of the math, not the optimistic version, not the theoretical version, but sitting down with a piece of paper and figuring out what I actually needed to spend to eat decently on my own. $320 a month. If I divide that by 4 weeks, I've got $80 a week. That's it. $80. One person, Florida. That's my number. And the thing is, when you're working and you go to the grocery store, you're not usually thinking in weekly slots. You're thinking, I need stuff, I'll get stuff, I'll pay for it, fine. Your paycheck is covering it. You don't have to reconcile it against anything specific because there's always more money coming in. But on a fixed income, $80 a week is a real constraint. And I had to learn how to actually operate inside it, which sounds simple, but it took me honestly about 4 or 5 months to stop going over consistently. There were weeks I'd come home from the store, unload my bags, add up the receipt myself on my phone calculator, and just sit there. $103 against $80. And then try to figure out where the $23 went and whether I could adjust somewhere else or whether that $23 was just gone into the month to be absorbed somehow. What I finally did, and I feel a little silly saying this out loud, but I think it actually helped. I started writing the number at the top of my grocery list before I left the house. Just wrote it in big letters. $80. So when I was standing in front of the salad dressing, wondering if I should get the one I liked or the store brand, I had something concrete to look at, not a feeling, a number. I know that sounds extremely basic. I'm aware that sounds like something you tell a 10-year-old, but it helped me in a way that just knowing the number in the back of my head didn't. There's a difference between knowing your budget and making it real in the moment you're about to go over it. I don't fully understand the psychology of it, it just works for me. The second thing is about store loyalty, which I had a lot of and had to let most of it go. I am a Publix person, have been for years. I like Publix, I like that it's clean, I like that the employees are nice, I like that when I ask where something is, they walk me there instead of pointing vaguely in a direction and going back to what they were doing. But Publix is not the cheapest option in Lakeland, not even close. About 4 months into retirement, my neighbor Gloria, she's been retired for 6 years, she knows things I don't, she mentioned she does half her shopping at Aldi. And I'll be honest with you, I had never been to an Aldi in my life. I drove past one for years and I don't know, it looked intimidating somehow, like the no-frills packaging would judge me. Gloria took me one Saturday morning, and I want to tell you, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I felt genuinely confused in there for the first 15 minutes. Where's the thing? Why is everything unfamiliar? Why do I have to put a quarter in to get a cart? But then I looked at my receipt at the end, $62, for what I would have spent about $95 on at Publix. I'm not exaggerating. I went home and compared the lists. Now I do roughly half and half. Aldi for the things that don't require brand loyalty. Produce, eggs, butter, the basics. And Publix for the few things where I really do notice the difference. Or where I have a digital coupon that makes it worth it. I've become a person who plans her shopping around digital coupons. I'm telling you, retirement does things to you. The third thing is cooking for one, which nobody warned me was going to be this annoying. When I was raising 2 kids, and even after they left, when Bob was still in the picture, I cooked for people. There was a quantity to aim for. A head of broccoli made sense. A whole rotisserie chicken made sense. You could use it, it wouldn't go to waste, you'd have leftovers, and the leftovers had a place to go. The math of cooking worked naturally because I was cooking for more than one person. Cooking for one is a completely different problem, and I did not understand that going in. I threw away so much food in my first 6 months of retirement that I'm embarrassed to think about it. Half a bunch of cilantro I bought for one recipe and never touched again. A whole container of cherry tomatoes I got optimistic about at the store and then watched slowly stop being useful over the next week. A block of cheese I thought I'd go through faster than I did. I'd look in the fridge on Sunday and just feel guilty at it. There'd be a little of this and a little of that and none of it enough to make anything with. And eventually some of it would go in the trash. The waste was driving me crazy. Because it's not just the food. It's that you paid for that food and now you're throwing money in the trash and you know it and you did it anyway. So I started buying smaller quantities even when the bigger size was a better deal by the ounce. Because the better deal per ounce doesn't mean anything if half of it ends up in the garbage. A smaller thing that actually gets eaten is worth more to me than a larger thing where I'm just paying for the part I throw out. It took me a while to really believe that rather than just know it, because 46 years of buying the bigger size to save money is a hard habit to override. I also started what Shelley calls it my repeat meal system. She says it like it's a thing with a title. I don't know why that became its name. But basically, I pick 2 or 3 things I know I'll eat for a week, and I build the shopping list around just those. This week, it's pasta with vegetables, a bean soup I can eat for 3 days, and eggs for breakfast and lunch. That's it. That's the week. It sounds boring. Sometimes it is a little boring, but my food waste is almost nothing now, and I'm hitting the $80 most weeks. Most weeks. My brother Gary calls me every Sunday, and when I told him about the repeat meal system, he said that sounded like something from a prison documentary. I told him he wasn't wrong, but it worked. He's 2 years from retirement, and he's starting to listen to everything I say, which is its own kind of gratifying. The fourth thing is the treat category, and I want to be honest about this one because I think people get it wrong in both directions. When I was first planning my retirement budget, I was so focused on cutting things down and being responsible that I basically wrote $0 for fun food, for the nice crackers, for the good olive oil, for the occasional pint of ice cream that has no purpose except making a Wednesday night feel a little better than it would otherwise. And that turned out to be a mistake, but not for the reason you might think. It wasn't that I was depriving myself and then binging. It was that I was buying those things anyway. I'd just decide in the store that it was fine, that I'd adjust somewhere else. And then the math was wrong, and I didn't know exactly where it had gone wrong because I hadn't planned for it. So I made the treat money official. $25 a month. That's the number I landed on. It's in the budget, it's planned for, it's real. And I don't have to feel guilty about the nice crackers because they're accounted for. $25 doesn't sound like much, and some months it isn't. But there's something about having the category exist officially that changed how I felt about spending it. It stopped being a failure of discipline and started being the plan. That's a real difference in how it sits with you when you're standing in the store. Shelley thinks the whole treat category concept is oversharing. She's probably right, but here we are. I want to tell you one more thing, and then I'll let you go. I do not have this fully figured out. I want to be clear about that because sometimes I watch myself talk about this stuff and I sound more confident than I actually feel. The truth is, I still go over some weeks. I still buy something and get home and think, that was a mistake. I didn't need that. I bought it because it was on an end cap and it looked good, and I was hungry when I walked past it. I'm still learning how to shop for a version of my life that I've only been living for a year and a half. And some days that's fine. Some days I have a good week and I come in at $74 and I feel genuinely proud of myself, which is a little funny when you think about it. 67 years old, proud of a grocery trip. But the small wins are real wins. And some days I stand in the Publix checkout line doing math in my head, and the cashier tells me the total, and it's more than I planned, and I feel that thing I felt a few weeks ago, that quiet little failure feeling. But I'm getting better at it. That's the most honest thing I can say. Slowly and imperfectly, on a Thursday morning with my list and my digital coupons and my $80 written at the top in pen, I'm getting better at it. And I think that's probably the only version of having this figured out that's actually true for anyone. Okay, so here's what I want to know from you. I'm specifically curious. If you're retired or close to it, what does your grocery situation actually look like? Have you figured out a system that works, or are you still kind of winging it the way I was for the first 6 months? Did you have a moment like mine at the Publix register where you realized your budget was more theoretical than real? Leave it in the comments. The real number, if you're comfortable sharing it, your actual weekly or monthly grocery spend. Because I just think it helps to know what other people are actually dealing with. Not the version where everyone sounds like they've optimized everything and clip coupons with a spreadsheet and never buy the thing they didn't plan for. The real version. The version where sometimes you just wanted the nice crackers and you got the nice crackers and you did the math on the drive home. That's the version I want to hear. And if you've got a tip that actually works for you, a store, a strategy, a way of thinking about it, share that too, because I am absolutely still learning and I am not too proud to take advice from the comments. And if you're watching for the first time, hello, welcome. My name is Linda. I'm just figuring this out one Thursday Publix trip at a time. My channel is called Just Linda Retiring. I put out a new video most weeks. No strict schedule, just when I have something worth talking about. I've been getting a lot of questions about my Medicare supplement plan, the one that fills in the gap. And I think that's going to be my next one, because that was a whole confusing thing when I first retired, and I spent a lot of time being very confused about it, and I don't think I'm alone in that. So if that sounds useful, stick around and I'll get to it. All right, that's enough from me today. Talk to you soon.